Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
The fourth podcast of the week, once we're back, and this one is all about the chippy chips.
Yeah, I put this into the schedule at the start of the week, and we obviously didn't really know how it was going to
pan out.
Drop.
Game hadn't been released.
There was speculation of certain things we've got, and we'll talk about it a bit more, the unlimited transfers, which I was long of the opinion was something they would do to keep the engagement of, I mean, you obviously get dead teams kind of fall off the longer the season goes on where people lose interest. But you could see anyone who's a casual just literally stopping at World Cup stage, couldn't you? So that gives a little bit for, sorry to use the word casuals, but you know what I mean. The less engaged, let's say.
Yep.
The casual player, I said it again, where they'll come back. They'll come back before Boxing Day, before Christmas or something, and put a new team in.
Should try and find a new name for them. Let's call them 1 hour player because they just log in for the hour before the deadline.
The 5-minute-er.
Yeah, the 5 minutes before deadline, the 5-minute men, the 5-minute men or women.
But no change to the other chips. There was a mention of Limitless, which I'd seen a few people mention. And thinking about it more, I'm a little bit surprised they haven't pulled the plug on that, basically. For those not familiar with what Limitless is,
pulled
it's
the
something,
plug in that, or pulled the trigger.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Pulled the trigger.
Pulled the plug would mean they've taken it away.
Can you tell I've only had one coffee so far today? Pulled the trigger, sorry. For those unfamiliar with the idea of Limitless, it's something that we'll be familiar with from the UEFA
Champions League
games, be it Champions League or UEFA Euro Fantasy, for example, where basically it's like the free hit, but there's no value restriction. You still can only pick like 3 players per team or whatever. But you could go Salah, Son, Kane, Haaland, KDB. You can just put them all in.
Go for it.
You can just put them all in. So we're back to square root one. There are a few things that are different this season to last. Now, subject to COVID, which it's not over. I think this time last year, we were coming back towards full attendances, everyone going back, and you think that's kind of it, maybe. Then winter came, and obviously it was madness, particularly in December, wasn't it? Where a lot of us would pause the season, basically, again, just shut everything down for a couple of weeks. They carried on, and we had this awful thing for 3 or 4 weeks where it was 4 games, it was 5 games, it was 3 games. It was a mess, wasn't it? Even on the day, it was like, deadline's coming in 10 minutes. I don't know if this game's going to be on or not. It was a mess.
Yeah. When they did shut it down as well, obviously the game weeks kept rolling. I was one of those people that just ignored it and didn't make any transfers in that period. There were plenty of people that still used their 1 free transfer every single week. You didn't bother with any, or you did.
You're talking about the season before.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking about when they shut it down. Then
I'm talking about the Christmas period where we only had like 4 games going on at a given weekend and stuff like that.
Wasn't ideal.
No, and obviously what we ended up with there was a second free hit. There was also a suggestion maybe we'll get 2 free hits now this year. That's not happened. I think if we had a COVID period like we've had last season, we'll probably get another one again, but we're not anticipating it. There was also some thought that they might double all the chips anyway, having done that with the free hit last year, i.e. 2 bench boosts, 2 triple captains.
It's just chips every other week, isn't it?
2. I've said this a lot, and the reason I quite like the Limitless idea is because I think it is very engaging for even people want to go, well, I want to have the best team I can possibly have in game week 2 or something and have a bit of fun with it, was that you don't have to overthink it. You can just smash into one particular week. Like game week 16 is a game week I'm going to speak about in a little bit on this as an example of that. But I think if you'd have gone down that route, you're overcomplicating the game. Not for us, but just for the average person. You're overcomplicating the game, and FPL really is for the masses. There's going to be over 10 million teams this year. Yes, teams, not players, because there'll be about 8 million robots. But the 2 million active people, they want to keep engaged in the game, quite obviously, I think. So there were a few things that are different from last season. If we remove the possibility, and of course it's unpredictable, maybe something will get postponed this year for COVID, but we can't predict it.
No.
And obviously, weather.
Yep.
If we hit loads of snow, half the time with these days, all the grounds have got undersoil heating, but quite often a game could be postponed because of safety. We had one, I want to say it was 2015. There was a load of midweek fixtures were postponed because of high winds in the northwest, and they deemed some of the stadium structures a little bit unsafe. A load of games got postponed. Obviously, snow, quite often it's not the pitch that's a problem, it's the surrounding areas, roads.
Was there any last year that were postponed from snow? Boom, boom.
Suj is absolutely taking the piss at me. But no, you raise a good point, because I'd thought, well, there hasn't been a game postponed for snow for ages other than the one
you were at.
Other than the one I was at in Burnley, which was such a funny day. And I remember, and I said this at the time, the amount of people said, oh, James, I'm so sorry you've gone all that way. I was hungover as hell because I'd been on the piss with the guys for a meet up in Manchester on the Saturday night. And people said, I feel so bad for you. I said, it's better than if we got beat. And sure enough, I went back up on a Wednesday night, got absolutely drenched in the rain. No one apologised for that. And we got beat. Anyway, it's all fun and games.
Weather can play
I will miss my trip to Burnley this season. But last season, there were 5 things that could postpone games other than the unforeseen. This season, there's only 3. So already, we're looking at less carnage already into a normal season. So last year, we had Chelsea Club World Cup.
Yep.
We don't obviously have that issue this year. We have the usual, the League Cup final, the FA Cup quarterfinals and FA Cup semi-finals, and also the FA Cup final. The FA Cup final, do you know the date that's scheduled for next season, Suj?
As in the season that's ahead of us. The week after the end of the season?
Correct, which is June the 3rd. Champions League final is scheduled for June the 10th. So the FA Cup final is not going to cause 1 or 2 games to be postponed this season either. So there are only 3 things this year, other than the unforeseen, that can cause postponements. You've got game week 25, and I'm going to steal Ben Krellin's, what he's kind of tagged these as the mini, the game week 25 blank, where maximum of 2 games postponed for the Carabao Cup final. Could only be 1, likely to be 2. Then you've got the large blank, which is going to be game week 28 this year. Now, the last 2 seasons in FA Cup quarter-final weekend, we've only had 4 Premier League games. And actually, 2 seasons ago, it would have only been 3, but for Villa and Tottenham getting added to that particular week, which worked out fortuitously. But normally, you end up with 4 or 5 games as an average. That will be the large blank. And then game week 32, you got a medium blank where there'll be games postponed for the FA Cup semi-finals. Unless, of course, we end up with 4 championship teams in the semi-final, for example.
It's got mini, large, and small.
Mini, large, medium, should we say?
Medium. We need better marketing. Right. The mini...
At Ben and tell him we need better
the
marketing.
The mini is the Happy Meal postponement. The large one is the super size.
The Grande Big Mac.
The Grande Big Mac. It's the super size. And the medium size one, that's just your standard extra value meal.
Quarter pounder.
That's your standard extra value meal.
Let's go
standard
with that.
Meal.
Let's go with...
Happy Meal?
No.
Super size?
No, we'll go hamburger, Grande Big Mac, and quarter pounder. There you go.
Done.
Right.
It's all about the marketing.
I'm going to at Ben later and just say, just for your information, this is what it now is.
Is that we're using burgers for chips. Well, no, we're using burgers for postponements. We're not actually saying that the chips are relative to these burgers.
That's correct.
Yo, shout out. Nico, rate that burger out of 10 yesterday. I ate that burger. 8.5. 8.5.
So it was worth me going home then, basically.
Double cheeseburger with well, Nico didn't get the full experience with the hot sauce, but you wouldn't have had.
But did you watch the girls last night?
I did not.
Go on, the girls.
I did not, James, but you did. Anyway, we've got a cheeseburger, a quarter pounder, and a Big Mac postponements.
So in
the
theory,
first one is only 2 games. Second one 4 or 5.
Let's look at it as what it's likely to be. So let's say we get 2 postponements in game week 25. Let's say
it's at February time, end of Feb, beginning of March.
It is, end of Feb. I'll tell you exactly if you hang on with me for a second. Game week 29. Let's say it's 6. That's what's been the last couple of weeks. So
6 postponements.
Let's say 6 postponements.
12 teams.
Yep. And let's say 32 will be 4 games off.
Yep. 8 teams.
Maximum. 12 games.
In the whole season.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, what also, I'd say confuses it, in terms of I couldn't lock down a chip strategy for you now, but I don't think we're going to get many variances in the way that it's particularly played this year. And one of the reasons for that is there are 3 3 midweeks this season for rearranged fixtures to go. We don't normally have 3.
And when you say they're free, and you've used the air quotes there for anyone listening on the podcast who's not watching on the YouTube, are they free, even free of European games in those weeks?
That's what I mean. Completely free.
Wow.
So last year we had, I think it was 33, 36, 37, I want to say. But we had, if you'd have got to the Europa League final, you couldn't have played. If Man City got to the FA Cup final, you
so
couldn't have
completely
played.
Free means they will be
game.
used for postponements.
The Europa League final is the Wednesday after the season is concluded. The Europa Conference League is the Wednesday after that.
So the 31st of
Champions
May.
League final is the Saturday after that.
31st of May, 7th of June, roughly.
Correct.
Yep.
So all 3 European finals are after the season finishes,
and the
FA Cup final
after the season
is after obviously the season finishes. So, in terms of which one's going to be the big double, might not be one. And the reason for that is, I'm thinking it from a TV perspective. If we've got 12 games that get rearranged into midweeks, if they spread them,
they can show them all.
They can show them all. That's a possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we could have...
They will want to as well.
Well, quite possibly. But it possibly depends what those fixtures are as well, in fairness. But we could have, for example, 4 in 29, 4 in 34, 4 in 37. It's not impossible. There's nothing... Last year we could look at it and we knew 36 was likely to be the big one. I don't look at this from a schedule perspective and think, oh, that's definitely going to be the big double game week. It's not obvious. So, for example, the reason I say that is the FA Cup 5th round is the midweek after the Carabao Cup final. So it's after 25. So before game week 26 starts, we'll know what games will be postponed in game week 28. Now, from a perspective of actual planning, in terms of whether I need to free hit there, whether I need to move towards it, there's not a lot. You've got, unless you've rolled 1, 2 free transfers to plan to that if you're not going to free hit, right? Obviously, you'll have an idea already in terms of the fixtures, who's likely to go through, who's not, etc. But in terms of could games from game week 28 blank go straight into game week 29, is there enough time in terms of letting fans know, that kind of thing? Absolutely. Absolutely it could. Because you've got the international break in the middle as well. So the period's actually longer than it looks. You've got a month where you could put anything postponed from game week 28 straight into game week 29. Now, again, we know from the TV companies, if they can do something like they did with Tottenham and Arsenal last year and smash it towards the end, that's what they'd rather do, for example. So I think, for example, there is one decent-sized fixture, I think, game week 28. So you could say like Man City versus West Ham, for example.
It kind of, if that does happen, though, it kind of rules out... So a wildcard bench boost combo where you wildcard the week before, you wouldn't work there because you'd wildcard in 28, trying to set yourself up for a bench boost in 29. But those players that you want in 29 ain't playing in 28. That's where the double goes. So that wouldn't work in that scenario. I'm trying to figure out what the impact is on chip strategy. But you couldn't wildcard in 28 for a bench boost in 29 then. The teams you'd pick that double in 29
correct.
don't play in 28, so what are you going to do?
Well, if 29 did turn out to be the biggest, which is unlikely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's more likely to be one of the other two, 34 or 37, I would think, rather than 29. But you could wildcard in 27, free hit 28, couldn't you?
Yeah.
For example. I think the two popular ones at the moment for the second wildcard would probably be on the day itself, the 29, and the thinking behind that is that potentially a lot of the teams that might double in that week could also then in the next one as well, possibly, and you've got the blank out the way, right? So we've had that in certain seasons before where we've had like double and a double later and the blank in the middle. That's not quite the scenario here because the one for the FA Cup semi-final is obviously a smaller one, right? Game week 32. It might be, if you want to do that, so if you wildcarded 29 and you were building towards perhaps double in 29, double 34, then you're probably free hitting for the FA Cup semi-finals, aren't you?
Okay.
So if you built towards the first blank, 28, the FA Cup quarterfinals. Wildcard did 29 on the first double. 34 has probably got some of the same teams going to double. They'd also then blank in 32. You free hit in 32. That's one way of playing it. And then obviously bench boost, triple captain, whatever you want, 34, 37. I'll come back to some triple captain ideas in a little bit. Another way of potentially doing it would be to obviously free hit in either the blank, the quarterfinals, or the first one, the first double, 29. So you might, once the FA Cup 5th round is done, you might be in a position where it's like, oh, I've got a decent team set up for the blank, or it might be the other way. Oh, I've got a decent team set up for the double. So you can do that in either way.
Yep. You're likely to have one or the other because they're different teams playing in each.
Yeah.
So you're likely to have one or the other. I mean, if you're spread half and half across both, that's unfortunate. But you'll know after game week, after the 4th round, who's still in it. You can kind of maneuver towards one or the other. So you're likely to be able to cover off one or the other with your existing team. So you're only going to need to want to use one chip.
Yep. And again, if it works out that you're quite well set for that first blank, you're probably going to be set okay for the second blank.
Right. Yep.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Shouldn't
because
probably
the same
be,
teams that are out.
It shouldn't be worse, right? No. Correct. So then you could look at wildcarding straight afterwards, 33. Possibly that's the one that's probably going to get you closest to wildcard and bench boost. If you're working through the blanks, then wildcard 33, bench boost 34, triple captain 37. As said, there isn't a guarantee that 34 is going to be the biggest double. I generally don't know how anybody could say right now that's going to be the biggest double. It'll come down to the TV companies and possibly which teams are in and out of the cups, etc. And possibly Europe might have an impact.
Yep.
Depending on who's still in Europe, who's still in the cups. We know Chelsea really didn't want to rearrange fixture straight after the Club World Cup last year, even though I kept screaming on this podcast, they've got to play. Yeah. They've got to play now because they will have the backlog. If they'd have beat Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final, they would have had such a backlog.
So,
finals, sorry.
One of the things you talked about there is you mentioned the word biggest double, but I think we've learned over time that quality of fixtures over quantity of fixtures. I would rather a smaller double, but where City, Liverpool have decent home games against bottom quarter teams than volume of doubles. Because you want to pile into 3 or 4 teams, you don't necessarily want one from 11 teams. So quality of doubles is as important as quantity of doubles. And I know you've kind of got an idea of what might double potentially, or which are the fixtures that can potentially move from the big teams, because we're going to assume that the big teams are the ones that are going to get through in the early rounds of the FA Cup. They generally do.
In terms of, from a bench boost perspective, that's in terms of, I'm not going to go full 20 teams in terms of what could be postponed and what might not. Listen, we know there will be a team that comes around who will have enablers and stuff that we can, I mean, even more so with the pricing this year, right?
Yep.
In terms of actually working towards a bench boost team, my guess would be, because of the amount of enablers, a lot of these 4.5s, there's so many of them that actually would normally be desirable, but because of the pricing of the defenders from last year's top 5, for example, that you're probably not going to go near. Some of them are going to be 4.2, 4.3 at the end of next season. So I think that certainly adds credibility and weight towards having the bench boost during a double at the end of the season, rather than, I mean, just to throw an idea just while we're talking about bench boost. Matt Halliday said, what do you make of a game week 1 bench boost followed immediately by a game week 2 wildcard?
I'm not convinced.
I hate it.
Yeah.
In all honesty, don't hate Matt. Love you, mate.
Yeah.
But no.
And we'll get. I've got how this works now. We've got questions today. The whole week.
I'm just gonna fit them in as we go.
But there was a few mentioning early chips, like Triple Captain Haaland in game week 2 or what have you. Yep. That one I don't mind. Triple Captain, if you really see a fixture and you taste it, go for it. But bench boost free hits, I think. I like the idea of using later.
Thing is, as well, start seeing you've got under $1 million to play with. By the time you come to the end, you've probably got 103, roughly, in terms of physical spending money. Your team value for many people will be like 106, 107. But in terms of your actual physical spending, once you know Trent's at 99.5% owned and he's 8.5 million or something, you've built up that $1 million, you're not selling him. But your actual spending value, you've probably got about 103 or so normally towards the end of the season. So you've got more to play with. What you're doing with a bench boost now? You could do it in the sense that, you could whack in the likes of Neto,
sacrifice a
Gomes,
premium,
Martinelli, exactly.
Spread the money, maybe.
Obviously, if you're going 1 week, then just captain Salah, Son, Haaland, whatever you fancy game week 1, and then spread the money and stuff. But no, I think there'd be unpredictability in game week 1. When you've got all these new signings coming in, no one knows for certain what an 11's going to be. We'll all do it. We'll all predict the 20 teams. A perfect case example of this. If you predict all 20 teams starting lineup in game week 1 and game week 2, I bet we would all be more accurate for game week 2.
Yep.
Because we've got that one of information.
Evidence,
No one's playing in that midweek in between, so we know who's done bad, who might want to change. Who's done good will probably go for the same. Game week 2 is more likely to have more familiar names to a previous week's lineup than what will be common during the rest of the season, particularly for those obviously in European competition as well. So no, I'm not a fan of using the bench boost early. I can never foresee a situation where I wouldn't use bench boost in a double. And I know it can be restrictive and prohibitive, but I always think it's the punch in the what can be. Last season, for the first season in a while, in fairness, most of us got good returns out of bench boost.
Yes.
Whether you went in 26 and went against the kind of Salah triple captaincy horde, or whether you had it nearer the end for 36 or 37, most did okay out of it, actually. And that's not always been the case. And obviously the one that people memorably talk about is the Kane 4-goal week, the end of the 16-17 season, where there were loads of teams in sort of like 200 plus scores, like insane. It was bench boosters knocking about with like 40, 50 on the bench and stuff. You're basically putting an extra very average week score on your total, right? So unless it absolutely fell into place really early, then I wouldn't advocate bench boost early in the season. If you were going to do it, there is a case for doing it very early, 1 and 2, rather than just going, I'll do it in game week 7, which say falls in between 2 Champions League midweeks. I mean, something like that's a nightmare, isn't it, in terms of rotation, potential one-pointers, etc. I will always go, I think, with the possibility of what it could be. Triple captaincy, there is more of a case, I think, for use it in a single game week. If the timing is right and you feel that you've got a situation where you've got like say last year we had Salah with the week, Norwich and Leeds in the double, which is why he was obviously so popular for it. Those are the sort of fixtures you could make the case to go, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yep.
I mean, Liverpool won those 2 fixtures, 3-1 and 6-0, for example. In terms of when you do it, the only advice I would say, if people are saying, when's a good time to do it, like I think is pick your battles. So like Haaland at home to Bournemouth in game week 2, you've got the information of game week 1. If he looks amazing, it's Bournemouth at home game week 2. There's no midweek fixture before. There's no midweek fixture afterwards. It's the sort of one that looks great. Again, I wouldn't want to be booking it in to go, right, so Mo Salah's got, for example, let's look at one further down the line. Forest away, game week 13. I'm just picking out as an example. When they've got West Ham the midweek before, Man City the weekend before, and there's Champions League the midweek afterwards. Yeah, that's the sort of one you think, it could be the one-pointer.
Yeah,
Haaland. Kane game week 6 would be the good example. That one I said earlier in the week about Tottenham could end up playing Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, from game week 5 to the first midweek Champions League, 3 days for the 4 games. And that's going to happen now. So like Kane or Son, game week 6, I would look at right now at home to Fulham and go, no way. No way for a triple captaincy. Yep. Even though those two particularly feel like they're never going to get left out. But circumstance might be different now with Richarlison in the squad, and Tottenham might add another forward. So I think that would be pick your battles, be sensible about it.
I think so too. Like Haaland at home to Bournemouth tempts me, but I'd want to see at least the return or 2 in the first game and understand a little bit about how they're going to play. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I'm good with going in a single game week. He says, with the evidence last season of when Bowen tore it up, what did he? It was 72 as a triple captain, wasn't he? That he returned, and then Salah's 84 or whatever.
Again,
were both double game weeks, and they returned in both. And then I think like anyone in the double game week.
I mean, the KDB one, if you'd have just hit the night at Wolves on its own, was massive in itself, obviously. But yes, last year we had the Salah 26, the Jared Bowen I think was 21, KDB in 36, even Richarlison in 37 was a really good return for Everton's double. I think Kane and Son were both 15s in 36 as well. The only one that really seemed to burn people, and forgive me, I'm going to miss a few obviously, was Salah, 36, ironically, with the blank against Tottenham and then the benching against Aston Villa. That was my captain that week as well, not triple captain. But that was the only one. A lot of the popular ones last year really did pick off. If you'd have triple captain almost any of the other popular players bar Salah in 36, you were in with KDB, Son or Harry Kane, for example. But again, ideally you would go for a double. So one of the questions we've had that come in was from Raymond Nordahl. Says best non-Liverpool option for triple captain would be whom and when. You, sir, Raymond, are about to get one of the most detailed answered questions on this podcast ever. So what I've done is I've looked at the potential postponements and potential double game weeks for the greedy six, if you will, the big six, the Super League six, whatever you want to call them. There is a notable one just before I do them, because I haven't looked at every team. But there is one for West Ham that could knock up quite nicely. You've got Nottingham Forest at home in game week 25. And then you've got Leeds at home in game week 37. Now, if that did rock up, game week 37... West Ham, out of Europe, being competitive, Forest at home and Leeds at home is pretty good. But, let's be honest, to map it out from the start of the season, it's likely that it's going to be someone from the big six. Now, you can probably look at it now and go, well, I'm not going to triple captain Bruno Fernandes, for example. Listen, this time last year, everybody under the sun was telling me I couldn't start the season without Bruno Fernandes. It might swing the other way now. Ten Hag's coming in, right? And he might become a very viable asset again. So I've looked at...
We're quick to forget. He's had a bad season, but he has been a good FPL asset.
Well, exactly that. Maybe Jesus will score 25 goals and he looks like an option, for example. Nico just played with the camera and it right scared the life out of me. Because I think, for the benefit of those on YouTube, yes, I think Nico just half dropped the camera, but it wasn't Nico's fault. I've looked at the potential postponements for the big six teams. And I'm going to run through these in order of teams. So... we'll go through the way they finished last season. So Manchester City, potential postponements, and this is obviously based on them reaching the Carabao Cup final and the FA Cup semi-final. Potential postponed games would be Bournemouth away, West Ham at home, and Brighton away. Now, those fixtures would obviously go into the midweeks following the fixtures we've said. So those would be to go into the midweeks after 29, 34, 37. Now, City's fixtures... for those 3 game weeks are Liverpool at home, Fulham away, Chelsea at home. Therefore, the best combination, I think, for Manchester City would probably be Fulham away and Bournemouth away, game week 34. That's the best possible outcome for a Manchester City double game week at the moment without intervention of COVID, whatever. For Liverpool, their 3 games that could be postponed are more attractive. And this is to go back to Raymond's question of what's the best non-Liverpool option? I'm afraid to give you the spoiler now before I do the others. The best option is going to be Liverpool. Liverpool's potential postponed games are Crystal Palace away, Fulham at home, Nottingham Forest at home.
All good postponements.
Well, Palace away is always potentially tricky. We've seen that last year. City drew there, and in fact, even when Liverpool went there, admittedly, Salah was at AFCON. Give Liverpool trouble, right? They battered Arsenal there last year. They battered Tottenham. Chelsea only won there very late. Palace away wouldn't be overly attractive. They're a good side defensively, right? The other 2, though, Fulham at home, Nottingham Forest at home. Now, of course, that's dependent on Liverpool's progress, specifically in the FA Cup. And basically, the middle option I'm giving here of the postponed option is the most likely one. remember, for the Palace game, in Liverpool's case here, to be postponed, it would have to reach the Carabao Cup final.
Right.
For the Fulham game to be postponed, you only need one of Liverpool or Fulham to reach the FA Cup quarter-final. The Forest game would be one of those two teams to reach the FA Cup semi-final. So the middle option is also the most likely game to be rearranged. And on paper, you could make a case between Fulham and Forest. Fulham might be the best one anyway. Here's the catch. Liverpool's fixtures in the 3 midweeks beforehand are Manchester City away. That's worth saying. City away is probably unlikely to be paired with Fulham or Forest.
Because they're
it
later.
it would probably be. It could be the Fulham. It's impossible to be City and Forest, for example. That's impossible. City away, Tottenham at home, Villa at home. So Villa at home is 37. And this is where I think some people have already identified and gone bench boost 34, triple captain 37 potentially. And that's because the possibility of Liverpool playing in game week 37 at home to Aston Villa and at home to either Fulham or Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, tasty.
But Villa might improve a lot this season.
Liverpool might be 10 points off City in the league and be in the Champions League
final,
semis, and then the focus is elsewhere. So, but I get that. Looking on paper, though, eyes on it.
Yeah, agreed. Chelsea's potential postponements: Tottenham away, Everton at home, Manchester United away. So you've got one there that's good, two not so good. And it doesn't particularly work out great for Chelsea. So the 3 midweeks for them are Villa at home, Arsenal away, Manchester City away. So the only combination that would look great for Chelsea, I think, is Villa at home and Everton at home, and it would be game week 29. That's the only one. For that to come off, you also need Chelsea to make the Carabao Cup final. And that's the only way that can work.
You're asking for that Everton game to go straight into, from 28 to go straight into 29. Which there is no guarantee.
No. Particularly if you take it as well, let's say Chelsea make the Carabao Cup final and they're out of the FA Cup. Is there a guarantee or a need necessarily to rush that into 29? Might look at it and go, Chelsea going for top 4 or going for the title, whatever. We'll keep their one rearranged fixture towards the end, right?
I suppose one thing that we didn't talk about as a potential is 28 fixtures going into 32.
Yeah.
That could also happen. They don't have to go into midweeks necessarily. They can go into that weekend if they get knocked out in 28. So a game that doesn't happen in 28 because of the FA
that's
Cup.
Extremely unlikely.
We've seen that before where fixtures get added into, postponements get added into a weekend schedule.
Yeah, but you're very unlikely to work with the pattern-wise that you'd have a game that would be postponed because of an FA Cup quarter-final, and then it definitely works to go into the FA Cup semi-final weekend.
Because they lose the quarter.
Yeah, it could do, but then I don't know why you'd force it. There was times last year, Villa Burnley was one, wasn't it? I kept screaming, like, put it on the weekend of FA Cup 4th round. Put it in there. They've already been fucked over with the travel once. Don't make them go on a midweek night. Put it on the weekend and make it better for the fans. But they wouldn't do it, would they? So why would they do it this way? Put it 3 o'clock on a Saturday when they can put it midweek and probably show the game on the telly.
Yeah, TV will have more of a say than anything else.
Correct, because the TV fixtures for that weekend will have already been announced. Okay. Almost definitely as well. So if it did get shown in there, it's probably unlikely to be added to a TV schedule unless it was to replace another game that got postponed for an FA Cup semi-final. It's unlikely in that case anyway. So Chelsea potential double game weeks wouldn't look great. What about Spurs? Which is probably the next interesting because of Son and Kane specifically. So, and this is again a little bit mixed. So Tottenham's potential postponed games: Chelsea at home, Southampton away, Newcastle away. I think you've got 2 pretty tough ones there. In Chelsea and Newcastle away, obviously another team we think could well improve this year. The 3 midweeks for Tottenham follow fixtures: Everton away, Liverpool at home. Liverpool away, Brentford at home. So the best case scenario for Tottenham, like Liverpool, would also be game week 37, which would be Brentford at home, and you could take your pick between Southampton away or Everton away. I would argue probably Southampton away in terms of the capability of how many goals might be scored. Plus, who wants to go to Everton? Who wants to go to Goodison Park on a midweek and game week 37 when they'll be fighting for their lives to stay up?
Yeah.
Southampton will be 14th. Arsenal. Arsenal's potential postponed games, there are a couple of good ones here. Leeds at home, Chelsea at home, Forest away. Oh, sorry, those are the potential rearranged games. Sorry. Potential postponed games. Leicester away, Palace at home, Southampton at home. There's nothing awful there, I would say. And those fixtures would go after Leeds at home, Chelsea at home, or Forest away. So best case scenario I've got for Arsenal, also game week 37, Forest away, Southampton at home. Finally, Manchester United, potential postponed games, Brentford at home, Brighton away, Chelsea at home. And those would follow Newcastle away, Villa at home, or Bournemouth away. Best case scenario for Manchester United, also in my opinion, game week 37, Bournemouth away, Villa at home. So of the big six...
I think you mean Brentford at home.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I've written the wrong bloody team. Brentford at home and Villa at home.
Bournemouth and
Thanks, mate.
Would you say Villa at home, Brentford at home?
It's nice to know you were paying attention.
Is better than Bournemouth away, Brentford at home. Villa at home, Bournemouth away, which is the trickier fixture.
We could make the choice.
That's a 50-50. But
I'd probably go with a home fixture.
Yeah.
Particularly as well, what I'm thinking as well, game week 37, what's the chance of Villa having anything to play for?
Not much.
Bournemouth might be right in the scrap, right?
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah. So of the big six, either way, I think 37 would be the best case scenario for a triple captaincy. Now, that doesn't mean that's the way it's going to work, because if it drops it's Fulham and Bournemouth is going to be the best case, then you're probably looking at triple captain 34 and switching the bench boost to 37, for example. But I think the most common usage for the triple captaincy will be 37, which is probably going to make bench boost the 34 week, I think. Plus then with that as well, your wildcard a little bit earlier. As I said, there's that potential option of wildcard 33, bench boost 34. So for a set, that's the ideal. Wildcard 33, bench boost 34, triple captain 37. And when you free hit, is probably how you're set for 28 and 29 once the FA Cup 5th round games are done. For me to sit here and say, hey, Suj, this is what I'm going to do this year, I can't.
No, but I don't think you need to. I think we'll have plenty of time to make these decisions. We're not going to have to make them quickly. And I think we'll be able to play. There's not as many decisions to make, or not as many permutations and combinations to weigh up in your head. So I think it's going to be easier to make these decisions in the moment when we get past game week 27, 28, and we know what's cooking around.
If I said to you, what did we say? Like 12 is probably best case scenario of games postponed. If I said to you it was going to be an even split of 4-4-4, does that add any weight to you going, nah, sod it, I will use that bench boost early? I know you're not going to know, but would it add any credibility towards that?
When you say early, you mean in a non-double game week?
Yeah.
No. I'm still going to bench boost. I want to, and triple captain, I want to use in double game weeks. Right?
Do those double game week possibilities make you think I want to use the triple captaincy on something like Haaland v Bournemouth?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, early.
Yeah.
I thought you meant if they had Fulham and Bournemouth as a double.
Well, I mean, that's point as well. We've got that as the best case scenario, as Bournemouth possibly as part
keep
of
my
the
powder
double.
dry with those chips till we get towards the end. Yeah. I've heard nothing that makes me want to feel like I should just get them used early at all. Yeah,
and in terms of free hit, I mean, you don't have to use it in 28 or 29 as examples. As I said, you could use it in 32 potentially to be aggressive about that week, possibly subject to who is and isn't playing on that FA Cup semi-final weekend. But it probably is going to fall that you'll probably want to use it 28 or 29, whether you are Sword v Shield, for want of a different term. Mm-hmm. And I think it may literally come down to how you set that just influences the decision. So I think the best advice for the season in terms of chips would be, I don't mind, relax. Sorry, don't worry about it. We'll speak about it again after the FA Cup 3rd or 4th round.
Although the bench boost and the free hit are not the only chips that we have, we do need to kind of talk about Wildcard, because one of those chips, one of the wildcards, does have to be used in the first half of the season up to game week 16 when we have the World Cup, and the other in the other half. Couple of questions. Let's start with this whole World Cup unlimited. Are you fairly comfortable with this unlimited during the World Cup?
Well, I assumed it was something they were going to do. I'd say assumed that it's something I thought they would do.
I haven't got a particular problem with it. I think it's fine. It's going to be added an extra dimension.
I'm not someone like, as I said, I think Limitless would have been a nice idea for those who are less engaged, and many of the people will be listening to this and stuff, because it would have kept them active, and it's quite an exciting chip in terms of the physical team you can put on the pitch together and stuff. But I'm not one of these who gets, I want these chips, or I always treat it as in, this is the cards that are dealt. This is
how we should play it.
It'll be, and then we just maneuver and act like there. And I'm not one of these as well who, and you see it every year, FA Cup 4th, 5th round or something, and you think, I really want this team to win because yada yada yada, and you can't influence it. Unless it's my own team playing, like just however it comes out in the wash is how it comes out in the wash, and we'll adapt with it from there. So no, I don't get hung up on it.
No, we've got 2 international breaks. One that divides the first half of the season into 2 neat blocks of 8, and one that splits the second half of the season into a 10 and 12 10-week block and a 12-game-week block, which is nice for people that then want to think about chunking the season up into 4 parts and use their wildcards in international breaks. It's quite good to use it in international break. You can sometimes build up value. You've got more time to kind of think about your wildcard and tinker with ideas and what have you. So yeah, I think one of the questions that we've had in, and a lot of people are thinking about more than the free hit and the bench boost for now, is the first wildcard.
Yeah, it's the far most relevant
thing. Go early, go after 6 weeks. Where's the fixture swing? What do I do with that wildcard? I'm fairly open-minded right now. I know you've thought about a few scenarios that might play out, and pull the trigger when you're comfortable pulling the trigger.
I've looked at this more than I did spending time looking at chip strategy and stuff, in terms of trying to find, like I said, that Chelsea swing last year.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. I don't see anything where suddenly it comes round where it's like, oh my God, Manchester United have got 4 or 5 great fixtures. Do you know what? I'm going to do it there. I'm going to go Bruno, Dalot, you know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah.
Ericsson, whatever. Go with 3 strong Manchester United players, and I'm not saying Dalot's strong, I'm taking the piss, but go with 3 Man United players till the wild card. I don't see anything like that. There's a couple of things to mention. I'm going to look at a couple of team ideas specifically on the podcast tomorrow, but just to discuss the ideas at the moment. There's a few potential ideas. So I think anything pre-game week 6 wildcard is either I'm doing it for value, which I think there's a strong case for that. I think my instinct is I think a lot of people will wildcard really early. I'm talking sort of game week 3 or 4, really early, and they might not be thinking that at the moment. And I think one of the reasons for that is, well, there's 2 reasons. One, there isn't anything identifiable that you go, that's a brilliant swing of fixtures for the big clubs, where what happened last year was, to just highlight the Chelsea thing. Chelsea had Tottenham, Liverpool and Man City, then the swing. So you really wanted to be in a position where you probably had nothing. And admittedly, Chelsea didn't do too badly in those fixtures. There was one other, it was Villa in there as well. And then they had the swing where it was like, at that point, I've got to have 3 Chelsea players, or at least have 2, build towards it if you were saving it like I did. There isn't anything like that. So I think that will lead people to go early. And I also think, and again, we'll spit about it more tomorrow, the ownership numbers of the Magnificent 7, and you can debate whether they are or they're not, the template players at the moment, the 4 defenders, Salah, Haaland and Gabriel Jesus, who all have 40% ownership more. If they don't perform well at the start, they will lose some value. And the game looks like it's going to be so template at the moment that it might force people to move and panic. Things like that. If you're suddenly in a position where, say, Liverpool, City and Spurs are conceding goals in their opening games and the defensive guys aren't getting attacking returns, and you look at it and, Trent's losing value, Cancelo's losing value, Perisic losing value. And you might look at that now and go, those players are all underpriced. And I absolutely agree. But if they're going to lose value, I don't want to be losing value this early in the season. It causes panic. It causes panic. I've got to bring the value up. Even if you wild-carded out the 3 premium defenders, for example, I'll buy them again at the 0.1 shorter or something and build some value somewhere else. Sort of strategy you can do. and again, because there's not anything identifiable with fixtures, where I think people might just think, I'm just gonna do it now. Like, if the template doesn't work at the start of the season, I think so many people will wildcard early. So many people. So I would call it pre-game week 6. I would call it either the value wildcard or the we've fucked it wildcard, where basically the template bombs and everyone needs to move away. Pre-game week 7 or 8, I would call the pretenders swing. And by pretenders, I mean the teams who will have ambitions to try and finish within the top 6 places this year, but know they're chasing it. So there are runs from sort of game week 6, 7, 8, where suddenly Newcastle, Leicester, West Ham, and Villa starts good. They have 3 bad fixtures, and then it comes again, where you're looking at it on paper, and this is why I say it's not easy to identify. What are you going to do? You're going to move from Salah to, because he's got difficult fixtures, to Bowen, to Maddison. But it might enable you to look at it and go, I'm going to go Bowen, Coutinho, Maddison, and just really change it up, where those players don't look like they're going to be like Harvey Barnes, for example, Jamie Vardy up front. Although Vardy's quite interesting for the start, I think, as well, if you want to go against Erling Haaland. But I'll talk about that tomorrow. So that's the pretenders wild card. And then following that, you've got the interlull. The interlull will be popular because it splits it in half. Yeah. 8 game weeks v 8 game weeks. But I've looked at that week at wildcarding, and I'm already thinking, right, so if I wildcard in the international break, what exactly am I buying at that point on wildcard? And to define that, on my fixture ticker for the following 5 fixtures from game week 9, I have Manchester United worst, I have Arsenal 3rd worst, Manchester City 4th worst, Liverpool 6th worst. Liverpool's fixtures from game week 9 are Brighton, Arsenal, Man City, West Ham. That's the 4 that follows. Manchester City's is United, Southampton, Liverpool, Arsenal, then Brighton. Arsenal have got Tottenham, Liverpool, Manchester City in 3 of the following 4. And United have got City, Tottenham and Chelsea in 3 of the 5 that follow. This is what I'm saying. You wildcard in the international break, what actually would you wildcard to? The best I've got of the greedy 6 would be Chelsea, who I rank as 6th best. Palace, Wolves, Villa, Brentford, Man United, the 5 that would follow. That's the period where I said I think the best 5 fixture block of any team pre-wildcard is Leicester, game weeks 9 to 13. Forest, Bournemouth, Palace, Leeds, Wolves. Villa I've got 2nd best, West Ham 4th best, Newcastle 7th best, and a good run for Palace starts from game week 10, the following week. Fulham and Bournemouth have decent runs at that point. The way it shifts, and also this happens right at the end of the season, the big clubs have really good runs at the end of the season as well. But in the middle parts, there isn't periods where you go, City got a great run, Liverpool got a bad run. It's like all the way through, they're all together. They've either all got a good run or they've all got a bad run. It seems to happen. And that's just something to be aware of. And as I said, you could go down that route and go, it might be that Haaland or Salah at this point, a little bit like Salah at that point last year looked like kind of a perma-cap every week. It might be that you get to the international break and Salah or Haaland look like they're going to be that again, and you go, like I said, Maddison, Bowen, Callum Wilson, whoever Newcastle might buy, for example, Coutinho, Watkins, do it that way. But are you brave enough to do that? When right now we're looking at it and going, we're basically picking our team from top 4 or 5 last year, and whatever's available financially afterwards, bit of Newcastle, bit of Villa, bit of Wolves maybe. It's kind of where we're at, bar the all enabler options. So who wants to do that? Oh, I'm gonna wildcard in the international break. What for? You already got them players as well, right?
Yeah.
Presumably. Even if you said, I'm not bothered about City's Liverpool fixtures. No, that's fine. But then you've probably already got them players.
Agreed.
So it would only be, I think, if there were certain things where it became identifiable, where it's like, Reece James is injured, okay, I've got to have Ben Chilwell. Perisic is injured, I've got to have Doherty or Session. It might be loads like that you want to change about. It might be that it looks like you have to have Jota or Nunez up front, for example. That's all I can see.
There's definitely going to be injuries and suspensions that are going to play a part at some point. And I think that's when sometimes you end up with 3 or 4 flags. I think the rule for me is going to be in the first half of the season, if I find that I want to make 5 or 6 transfers, or there's 5 or 6 decent transfers that I can make, I'll just pull the trigger on the wild card and get it done. That anything less than that, 3 or 4, I think I can manage and maneuver over a couple of game weeks. But 5 and more, and it feels like it's a gain, I'm just going to get it done.
So, to throw a couple more ideas at you, there's a couple of other things I've been looking at in terms of the late usage of wildcard.
Late in the sense of the first half. 1 to 16, so 15, 14, 15, 16.
And this is where it depends. If we follow the template, and I'm not convinced that I will, by the way, but actually we should probably be quite strong in this year because of our experience with Sky Fantasy and working with template teams. We should be quite strong. I'm not convinced that's the way to go, because one major difference between Sky and FPL is you can't lose the value in Sky. Mm-hmm. In FPL, you can lose the value, and that's really important for those who are listening who are Sky players as well. There is one I've identified as the Manchester City wildcard, game week 15. Yep, it's 2 fixtures. City have got Fulham at home, Brentford at home, but it comes after a little period where you might be without City players for a little bit. And the idea behind that would be to use it as 2 free hits, essentially. A 2-week free hit, rather than a 1-week free hit. It's almost not like a wild card, more like a 2-week free hit, which is one way potentially to play the start of the season, which I'll talk about tomorrow, where you use the first 2 weeks as 2-week free hit, wild card game week 3, for example. But even with that, game week 15, you went, okay, right, I've got to have treble City, fantastic, Fulham at home, Brentford at home. Liverpool go to Tottenham, and Arsenal go to Chelsea. So again, what are you doing with the rest? The more interesting one...
When you talk about wildcarding for one specific team, it doesn't interest me because you can only have 3 of them. Like if you could wildcard and pick 6 of them, sure, but you can't. You can only have 3, and you might have 1 or 2 already anyway.
Yep.
And I want to be getting a gain of using 5 or 6 transfers. So that question that you asked there, what are you going to do with the rest, is the most important thing.
So if you're sitting there right now and thinking, well, I'm going to follow the template till the fixtures get bad, and I don't want to get rid of the players from the big 5 anyway, consider this, and I'm thinking about it. We've got 2 wild cards. Maybe what we want is 2 free hits. Game week 16, the final week before the unlimited transfers. Just want to highlight some of the fixtures for you. So, Liverpool have in game week 16, Southampton at home. Manchester City have Brentford at home. Manchester United have Fulham away. Tottenham have Leeds at home. If you've manoeuvred from the start of the season, where you're moving away from the template and perhaps integrating players from the top 6 pretenders, your Bowens, your Madisons, etc., moving that way, and then you look at that final set of fixtures before the unlimited and go, I can't get to them. And because of the pricing this year, you can nearly thump in a free hit team of Liverpool, City, United and Tottenham for that game week 16. And then therefore, your first wild card is the unlimited period. And rather than 2 wild cards, you've actually got 2 free hits.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you did last year? Didn't you like wildcard in 38 or something?
Exactly that. The problem with that, because I had a free hit and a wildcard that I used back to back, and you made the valid point, like use the free hit first, because if you wildcard, you're going to fuck up your team value. If people have built up, if you're using the wildcard in 16 or whatever that game week is, 16 before the
correct
thing. And then you've got unlimited, and you're like, right, I'm going to wildcard into players I want for just this week, and then I'll get back the players I had before. If you're using a wildcard to do it, and if you've got value built up in the players that you want to buy back, that's going to make your life difficult. So if Trent's gone up from 7.5 to 8, and then you want to not have him for 16 but get him back straight after, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. So I think team value, depending on what happens with prices, might dictate whether that's an affordable strategy for people. The likelihood of these highly owned players going up in value, though, is quite low because they're already so highly owned. It's mad.
There's also another beauty about that week, game week 16, as using the wild card as a free hit in game week 16 is, and we spoke about this earlier in the week, the midweek before is the Carabao Cup 3rd round, and obviously the week after is the World Cup. You would think that final week, game week 16...
Everyone's going to go strong?
Absolutely.
You want to end that half of the season on a win.
And with good fixtures. So, you could say that's a waste of the wild card, and I don't disagree with that. And I would think the most likely option for me right now, but it would be subject to how I start, is honestly to take the I've fucked it, take the value option wild card at the start, I think. Because I just can't see in the international break where I'm going to wild card and move to take away all these guys from the City and Liverpool when, irrespective of fixtures, still great, right?
Yeah.
So what am I doing too? Unless I want to move, like I said, people okay, I need to get Jota, I need to get Nunes. Maybe Jack Grealish will really develop, for example, this season, which I think is a possibility. These sort of things. Otherwise, it could just be that it sits. If I haven't used it for the international break, and I get there and I'm happy with my load, I could genuinely see me going game week 16, free hit, then unlimited, because that week looks so hot.
Good. I think we've done pretty, considering we know nothing and the season hasn't even started. I think that was pretty impressive. As always, I'll give the old patron a plug. A lot of the information and the way that James is describing the fixtures, he has a very good spreadsheet that's available to all patrons in our Slack channel, as well as the extra podcasts that we do. So you can head over to patreon.com/planetfpl if you want to join that community as well. Next week, we're going to be putting all of the Patreon shows out to the public as a kind of taster of what we do on a weekly basis for that as well. So if you want to hold on. But yeah, definitely that spreadsheet is very helpful for people that like to see fixtures visually rather than that. I'm definitely one of those. Like when we record these shows,
and
I
you like Skittles,
to keep up. And I know people have to listen to these types of shows with pen and paper. It actually helps me to listen to the show with the fixtures up in front of me. So just giving a little plug there if you are interested. And if not, we'll be back at you tomorrow with a show where James and I will be doing first drafts.
Couple of things for a finish. One, I'm going to talk about this more on the podcast that we're going to do for you tomorrow. But I'll leave it with this as a question for you. Trent Alexander-Arnold, I said to you earlier this week, most underpriced player in the game, in my opinion, 7.5. He's around about 60% ownership at the time of recording. How high do you think his price can get?
I don't know. I don't know the algorithm that takes the price.
I think we need to seriously think about this. Because you're talking about, you mentioned, Trent's 8 or 8.1. Is he this year? Is that even possible?
May never get there.
Trent finished last season at 8.4. If he's 60% owned at 7.5, can he even get that high again?
Possibly not.
The closer we get, FOMO's going to be a big thing. But I wonder, I look at that and think, Haaland, 65% owned. Can it even go up in price at the start of the season? And I'm really conscious of this. I'm going to look at some ideas around that tomorrow. I also want to give a shout out to Peter Featherstone, one of our advanced tier patrons. Top lad, lovely bloke. Did all my running in game week 39 as well, alongside the Iceman, James Drury. Many of you will be familiar with FPL.team, which is Peter's website, and it's particularly useful, not so much now for chip strategy, but certainly in terms of trying to plan in when you might want a wild card early, because FPL team allows you the functionality where you can look ahead forward in the season. So you can put your game week 1 team in and you can see what that looks like in game week 2, etc., etc. And this morning, he's launched his app.
Yeah, I've downloaded it, mate.
Same.
I downloaded it. I opened it. And, look, to be honest, I downloaded it 5 minutes before we were recording. Opened the app up. Very slick. It asked me for my team ID.
Which you don't know.
I don't fucking know. So I haven't got into it yet, but I am about to, because I think when we get into our drafts and stuff, it's very useful to tinker around. Have a look at it. It's on Android. It's on iOS. He is... he's platform agnostic, is our friend Peter. So
no, he's not. He's not even asked me to shout out. Never mind paid us. Just love him and love the site.
Exactly that. And I've seen many people do use it as for screenshots.
Although he does pay us every month. In fact.
That's fair play. There we go. Listeners, love you all. Thank you so much. Do share the podcast if you don't mind. Get as many listens as we can. People do love their chips. And they'll back at you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Cue music, please, man child.